Hello, this is Year 1 Psychology, this is Social Influence, and we're looking at explanations now for conformity. And one of the key things that you need to get straight in your heads with this topic is just the titles of them. What's a type of conformity versus an explanation for conformity? In terms of a type of conformity, which we've already looked at, identification, internalisation and compliance, that's basically like how much we conform or how deeply we conform or like ways in which we conform. So try and think of it in that way. Whereas when we look at explanations, we're looking at why we conform, and those are normative social influence and informational social influence. So what's the reason behind us conforming? What's going on? So you need to get those two things separated in your mind. So make sure you write in big letters at the top of your notes for this topic, explanations, so that you remember which is which. So in terms of explanations for conformity, let's look at normative social influence first, which is the idea that we're agreeing because we want social approval. We're agreeing because we don't want to be ridiculed, we don't want to look stupid, we want people to like us. That's basically normative social influence. That's one explanation for why we conform. Another explanation is informational social influence, which is the idea that we agree with the opinion of the majority because we believe that they are correct, and then we accept it because we want to be correct as well. So think about with informational, think about looking to somebody else for information. You're conforming because somebody else has information that helps you decide what to do. And we believe they're correct and go with it. So they're two quite different sorts of, or not sorts, two quite different explanations for conformity, aren't they? Whereas, and you can maybe think which one would be linked with compliance and which would be linked with internalisation. And there's a key pairing, which I haven't put on the PowerPoint, so let's talk about that. Normative social influence, which you may already have worked out, often goes hand in hand with compliance. If we're only conforming because we want to be liked, we might well just say or do something that we don't really agree with. We're just going along with it because we don't want to look stupid. So those two often get paired together. If we're complying with something, it's normally for a reason of normative social influence. On the other hand, internalisation often goes hand in hand with informational social influence. Because what you've got is, if you're looking at internalisation, someone wants to know what the correct thing is, don't they? If you think about someone like thinking about converting to another religion, they're actually seeking the truth, trying to work out what's really true and whether they agree with it. And so if they do convert and make that public, private, permanent change, then that's often linked with the reason behind it would be more like informational social influence. You're conforming to the behaviour of other people because you believe they're in the right, you believe they're correct, you believe they have the right information. So there you go, that's the link between types and explanations. But yeah, make sure you're clear that these are the explanations. Okay, let's look at some evaluation then. So first of all, informational social influence. It's supported by Genesis' bean in a jar study, which we looked at in the last PowerPoint, because people are looking to others in the group for information, and then they make that change, don't they? They conform, they change their answer. It's because they were unsure, it's an unclear task, they're looking to others for information. So that's one piece of research evidence that supports informational social influence. Equally, you can see it happening when you look at the task difficulty variant of ASH. When the task gets more difficult, people look to others in the group for information because they're not sure, and therefore the conformity rate raises because informational social influence is now also affecting their behaviour. So because they're not sure, they're looking to others for information, they're trying to find the right answer, therefore it's informational social influence. They're conforming because they want to be correct. So there you've got two studies there that provide evidence that supports this explanation of informational social influence that happens. then if we look at normative social influence, the idea of normative social influence is supported by ASH, where you're conforming to avoid looking stupid. That's the original ASH's study where they're giving the absolutely obviously wrong answer because they don't want to look silly. Equally, it's supported by the interviews that Ash did after that first study of his, where he interviewed people and asked, you know, why did you give an answer that's obviously wrong? And they were saying things like, oh, if everyone else said that, I must be stupid, so I'm going to give that answer too, so I don't get made fun of or whatever. So that Ash's study supports normative social influence, but it's further supported by what people said in the interviews as well after that study, where they're really talking about normative social influence. So there you go. It's a kind of a short and sweet topic where you've got, because we've talked a lot about the studies involved already, there's not a lot of new information to learn, so that's good. So I'm going to suggest, I'm not going to take this in, but this is for you to do in your practice and your time, your 5 hours this week outside of your lesson time, where you need to I would suggest you practice peeling in evaluation. It's in this sort of evaluation that I often get answers that say one strength of informational social influence is ASH, which is just really unclear wording. So I would suggest that you use these tips where you're starting your point is talking about one strength is, or support of some sort, is evidence, that we have evidence to back up the idea of normative social influence, and then link back at the end. This shows this explanation for conformity is good because. Okay, so I would suggest, and I've put one example which I'm not going to read out for you now, but you can pull it up on the PowerPoint, an example for you to read. So I suggest you do a different one from this, but have a read of this first to give you an idea about how you could elaborate your answer. Okay, there you go.